The episode opens with Feraldo, Vasily, and a team of police in a meeting to discuss their plan to clear Central Park. Vasily, who had found out thousands of sleeping vampires underneath the Central Park, plans to unleash several silver bombs on the sleeping vampires and blow their nest. Although the tunnels are small and tactical, Feraldo asks Vasily to go with insertion teams of convicts and police for help. Elsewhere, Eichhorst and Kelly give Zach a pet that will protect him, a feeler, which was once a blind child that was transformed into a vampire. Since they are faster and more agile than a regular vampire, Kelly and Zach leave it with Zach for his protection. Initially, Zach fears with the feeler. However, he quickly learns that it obeys his commands like a loyal and faithful pet. Meanwhile, Vasily meets the police captain Kate Rogers, whom he hooked up with in a previous episode. She and her team will escort Vasily underground. But before that, Vasily and Kate go to Vasily's apartment to get numerous silver powder bags. Back at the apartment, Dutch and Ephraim are still conducting their experiments on the vampires. After seeing Vasily with Kate, Dutch seems a bit jealous. When Ephraim and Dutch learn from Vasily that there is a massive attack being launched on a major vampire nest, they decide to be close to the battleground in order to discover how the vampires communicate with the master. Unfortunately, there are too many signals at the location, making it difficult to understand what each signal represents. Back at the convict team that Gus and Angel are forced to be a part of, the leaders are using guns and forcing the members to enter the tunnels and kill all the vampires. The group of convicts now include a girl named Maria. The team is ordered to clear the tunnels with the promise that if they fight bravely, they'll receive pardons. As they encounter several vampires inside, Gus tries to protect Maria, who has no idea how to fight the blood-sucking monsters. While clearing the tunnels, he and Angel overpower two guards and accidentally kill them. In the end, Gus encounters Vasily in the tunnels with Kate and agrees to join them if they let Maria and Angel leave. So Gus convinces Angel to get Maria to safety, and they leave. Meanwhile, in another unit of the tunnel, Kelly rushes into Zach's room accompanied by Eichhorst and instructs Zach to pack his belongings, saying they have only minutes to escape from people who are coming to kill them. After Kelly and Eichhorst leave the room, Zach hastily scribbles a note inside a book and leaves the book behind. Later, Vasily comes across the book on his way to the nest and immediately radios for Ephraim to come into the tunnels, saying it is about Zach, though he doesn't share what he's found. In order to destroy the nesting vampires before sunset, Vasily reaches close to the nest with Kate and Gus. As he assembles the bomb, some feelers begin to appear, one after another. Gus and Kate hold them off, barely, until Vasily finally lowers the weapon and detonates it, sending the vampire beneath convulsing and screaming as silver powder fills the air and burns them. Back at the command center, as soon as an anxious Feraldo learns Vasily has taken down thousands of nesting vampires, she is overjoyed that humans are finally close to retaking the city. In the meantime, Ephraim and Dutch walk through the tunnel after Vasily's message and find the book. Ephraim is relieved to read Zach's message, that he is alive and okay. However, Dutch runs out of the room to find Zach if he is still nearby. Suddenly, Eichhorst emerges from the shadows and taunts Ephraim for being a terrible father. Furious, Ephraim demands to know where he can find Zach, although Eichhorst asks Ephraim to join Kelly and lashes out his stinger tentacle at Ephraim. Dutch arrives right on time and chops his hand with a sword. Immediately, Eichhorst flees screaming in pain. Back in the command center, Feraldo and her team are thrilled and share their happiness for the victory, until they discover thousands of vampires approaching past safety checkpoints and flooding in. Realizing the fatal consequences, Feraldo immediately instructs all units to withdraw from Central Park, tearfully admitting the battle is over as vampires overrun everything in sight. Eventually, Dutch and Ephraim emerge into the night as police retreat from the advancing vampires, and she convinces Ephraim to retrieve their gear so they don't lose the data they've collected. Elsewhere, Vasily and Kate also find their way out of the tunnels overjoyed with their victory, but their excitement turns to something far darker as they hear only panicked screaming and desperate cries for help. It is revealed that the Central Park nest was actually a trap. While the team successfully kills thousands of the blood-sucking monsters, larger groups of vampires invade the park above ground and capture the landmark. The master trapped Feraldo's men with his plan and took the opportunity to pour thousands of his minions above the ground through every checkpoint. In a flashback of Western Ukraine, 1941, we are introduced to two new characters, Fet and Alexei, who are Ukrainian soldiers in a war. Despite being under attack and fire, Fet comforts his friend Alexei, who is frightened to die. Fet assures him they will fight together for each other's survival. All of a sudden, an explosion knocks them out, and while they wake up, they find their enemy German soldiers standing in front of them. Back in the present day, Vasily feels defeated as he fills in Satrakian on the bloodbath in Central Park. However, Satrakian doesn't seem concerned, since he is aware of the Master's abilities, and he preaches faith, because he already has a new plan. Satrakian explains to Vasily about Silver and Lead they need to create a box that will trap the Master for eternity and cut off his communication with his minions. In the following scene, Quinlan meets Ephraim, who is working with Dirch on his research into how the vampires communicate with the Master. Meanwhile, Ephraim and Dutch fill in Quinlan with their findings of the mass of worms being the communication center of the vampires. The test they had conducted during the Central Park incident shows a recording with a spike in communication, which they've interpreted as a call to arms from the vampires to the Master. Suddenly, Ephraim gets an idea to retrieve the black box from the flight Regis 753 that landed the Master head New York from Berlin. Ephraim thinks the black box will lead them to the Master. Then the trio head towards JFK Airport to find the plane's recorder, even though it's outside the safe zone. Elsewhere, Satrakian and Vasily head to Satrakian's rival pawn shop to gain some necessary items. Meanwhile, Vasily wants to make a detour to check on his parents. Upon arrival, they find the hallways full of blood. Soon a former neighbor turned vampire tries to attack them, but Satrakian kills it. Vasily, who has been worrying for his parents, is shattered when he finds his parents dead on the bed, lying next to each other. As his father didn't heed his warning to leave the city, Vasily had lost both his parents from gunshots to the head. Enraged and devastated, Vasily calls his father a coward as he holds his mother's hand. However, Satrakian notices Vasily's parents were infected and tries to comfort him by saying it was an act of mercy. Elsewhere, Palmer, who is closer to death than ever, gets word from Duncan, his new head of security, that the ship requested by Eichhorst has arrived from Egypt. On being asked, Duncan says the cargo holds tractors and spare parts, to which Palmer claims he never signed off on any such shipment, and his signature has been forged by Eichhorst. Therefore, he heads off to inspect the ship, where he's refused access. Later, Eichhorst, who finds out about Palmer inspecting the ship, visits Palmer at Stoneheart. The two debate about their importance to the Master. While Eichhorst insists that Palmer's role is over, the sick old Palmer believes there's still a plan for him. Otherwise, the Master would have already killed him. After Eichhorst leaves, Palmer commands Duncan and his gunmen to invade the ship. But the ship is empty and all that remains are dead henchmen. In the next scene, Ephraim, Dutch and Quinlan are on their way to JFK. The guards ask Ephraim to pull over his car since they suspect Quinlan to be a vampire. However, Ephraim assures he is with him and is an associate. Upon noticing a family under attack, Dutch and Ephraim get off their car and try to save them from the burglars. Meanwhile, Quinlan steps in to make it an even fight and slaughter the burglars with his sword. Sacred to Quinlan, the family runs off, while Quinlan fulfills his hunger of blood and licks his sword clean. Back in the flashback of 1941, Fet and Alexei are put to work in a Nazi prison camp, led by Eichhorst. Since Alexei is cold, hungry and sick, he believes he won't be able to last longer. Soon they get a job offer from Eichhorst with facilities of good food, clothes, and better shelter. So without learning what the job is, Fet agrees to take the job for him and Alexei. In exchange of all those facilities, the men are given the duty of killing the Jewish prisoners who have been deemed of no further use at the camp. While neither Fet nor Alexei prove to be up to the task, Eichhorst points a gun at Alexei and persuades Fet to go through with it. Initially, Fet is also unable to shoot the innocents, however he later shoots one of them when Eichhorst threatens to kill both Fet and Alexei. Despite Fet shooting the Jewish prisoner, Eichhorst doesn't keep his word and still kills Alexei. He tells Fet that he chose wisely but slowly before he leaves. In the present day, Vasily and Satrakian arrive at the abandoned pawn shop, where Vasily opens up about his family history to Satrakian. He confesses that his father wasn't the first member of his family to commit suicide. Furthermore, he explains his grandfather, who turns out to be Fet from the flashbacks, had also committed suicide after being ashamed of what he did on behalf of the Nazis. His grandfather's actions during WWII were the shame of the family, and part of the reason for Vasily's bad relationship with his father. Since Vasily's father feared that darkness in himself and his son, he never wanted Vasily to do something that involved killing. However, Satrakian, who had his own interactions with Eichhorst during WWII, tells Vasily to forgive his father. He further explains that forgiving someone is like setting a prisoner free and discovering that the prisoner is you. Towards the end of the episode, Satrakian and Vasily meet Palmer somewhere in the dark. Although Palmer is still unsure about what form the Master has taken, he still shares the news of the ship. In order to find out more about the Master, Palmer insists Satrakian give him a dose of the master's white. Satrakian agrees but warns of the likely traumatic effect before the white works. He instructs Palmer to use 1 drop of white in each eye, and they depart. As they leave, Satrakian wonders that the missing cargo could in fact be the remaining 3 ancients, whom the master might have made alliances with and brought to New York to finish his job. Meanwhile, Palmer gets back home, where he forces his reluctant nurse to administer the drops of white into his eyes. The white doesn't work instantly, so Palmer gets frustrated and feels cheated by Satrakian. However, after a few minutes, just as Satrakian warned, Palmer feels the pain and passes out on the floor. The nurse presumes he is dead, until he opens his bloody eyes, scaring the nurse, who flees from the scene quitting her job. Then Palmer rises to his feet, looking stronger than ever, and smirks. Subscribe and hit that like button to help our channel grow. Turn on the notifications so you won't miss any of our new videos. Thanks for watching.